Hi again, everyone. It's Herb Stevens, the Skiing Weatherman, with another edition of Weather Weenies, coming to you today from the beautiful Spruce Peak Base Lodge area at Stowe, Vermont. If you haven't had a chance to come to Stowe and ski the rejuvenated Spruce Peak in the last couple of years, since they've added a couple of high-speed lifts and a lodge that is behind the camera that is just drop-dead gorgeous, it's about as nice a situation as you'll have for meals, right on the slopes, the lifts. The classic terrain here at Spruce Peak is old-style New England in many regards, with the upgrades of snowmaking, of course. Just a wonderful place to come, and on a chilly day like today, and it's, I can't tell a lie, it's only about 10 degrees Fahrenheit right now. The southern exposure of Spruce Peak, even on a midwinter's day, it's a little bit warmer than it is over on Mount Mansfield. It's very comfortable over here today. But let's get to the weather discussion. First thing I want to talk about is WO, Winter Olympics. And yes, there are problems in the vicinity of Victoria, British Columbia, because the El Nino is holding sway. We've got a split flow on the west coast. The stronger branch of the two is down here south of San Francisco, down to about San Diego and down to Old Mexico. We have a weaker branch here in the north, and still predominantly an upper level ridge over the Rockies. And every now and then an impulse comes in this northern branch and it tries to dent the ridge, but it really can't plow it out of the way. And that's what we need to drive cold air into British Columbia and bring significant snow to the Winter Olympics. It just doesn't look like it's in the cards, at least for the next week or so. They'll get some snow in the higher elevations from time to time, but the lower elevation venues, such as freestyle and I think the half pipe, they are going to continue to have to truck in snow and deal with the fact that it's just too mild with this pattern to really bring winter weather to all of British Columbia, especially the lower elevations. Up at Whistler, the alpine venues, they should be fine. Earlier this week, speaking of the southern branch, pretty good storm came across Southern California, Arizona, southern Utah, southern Colorado, and New Mexico, and it brought them a nice shot of snow. Now, that came out to the north of the Gulf of Mexico, and we had some significant snow in wonderful ski towns like Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Memphis, just to name a few. There was some pretty good snow in the Mid-South, and by the time you see this is what will have transpired. That impulse will have come to the East Coast. Meanwhile, up here as part of the PV, or polar vortex, the big cold trough that's covering the eastern United States and eastern Canada, it will spin off a storm that brought snow to Chicago and Detroit and Indianapolis and Columbus earlier in the week. And this impulse is going to tie in with the southern branch system. It's going to form a secondary storm in the mid-Atlantic region and go up off of New England. This will all have transpired by the end of this week. Washington, D.C., they're already buried with snow. They're going to get another moderate snowfall. Philly will get snow. But more importantly, the Poconos will get snow. The Catskills will get a moderate snowfall. The Berkshires of western New England will get a moderate snowfall. Lighter amounts will fall in northern New England, including here at Stowe. But you can see that it's snowing lightly today. And as long as this trough stays in place, the mountain locations in northern New England and in upstate and northern New York, particularly in the Adirondacks, they will continue to get a rather persistent level of light snow, and that's going to help sustain packed powder. Now, as far as the Midwest is concerned, the system that came down early in the week, it was strong enough, didn't have a lot of moisture, but it had a nice fluff factor. When you have a strong storm, cold air, and not a lot of moisture, whatever moisture you have available, you tend to get more of a 20 to 25 to 1 ratio of snow to water, which means champagne powder. And we had that in the upper Midwest and in the western Great Lakes. As long as this vortex stays up here by Hudson Bay and the trough stays in place, and I expect that to happen until probably well into March, you'll have these impulses coming through almost like a kink on a rope. If you had a piece of rope affixed to a car or the side of a house and you whip the rope like that, a little wave runs along it, and that's what happens with this large-scale polar vortex. That will bring light snows to the Great Lakes every few days, and it will be cold enough that they don't have to worry about any of the snow that they have going anywhere for a while. The southern Appalachians are simply enjoying the best snow that people in that part of the country can remember any time in their lives, and the same can be said for the mid-Atlantic. Southern Pennsylvania, Maryland, Wispin, Maryland, and Garrett counties just been nailed with snow the last couple of weeks. The mountains of West Virginia, wonderful, wonderful skiing and riding. The best that people in that part of the country really have seen in their lifetimes. New England, I think that the southern and central mountains will get some help from the storm that will have happened by the time you see this. And I think as we head toward the week of the 15th, there'll be more energy coming through the southern branch, hopefully hooking up with what's in the northern branch to produce another coastal snowstorm. This particular setup is going to be conducive to those coastal storms until further notice, right into the month of March. Now, there's a small threat, that this vortex will actually shift a little west at some point. The wavelengths, as it's called, will shorten, and a storm could threaten to go up to the west of the Appalachians, which would cause a problem in the east. But that is a small risk at this point. I think this pattern is going to hold. And that means the same pattern in the west. Every now and then you'll get a little jet energy in this northern branch going into the northern and central Rockies, and they'll get some light snow from time to time. The big action will be down south, just as it's been all winter long. Southern Sierra, Mammoth, Arizona, Snow Bowl, Bryan Head in southern Utah, Telluride, southwestern Colorado, and Taos in New Mexico. They can look for appreciable snows in the coming weeks. Sometimes when it gets this cold, the jaw doesn't work really well. So that's basically the setup we've seen much of this winter. It's the setup we're going to see for the foreseeable future. And if you are in the southern Appalachians, central Appalachians, northeast, midwest, southern Rockies, southern Sierra, the snow is outstanding and you have no excuses. Get off your couch, get in your sled, and get to those hills and enjoy it. You'll be able to see the video we shot here at Stowe by about noontime on Thursday. That would be roughly the 11th or 12th of February. I'm not even sure of the date. And we'll have the next installment of the Weather Weenies for you next week from Catamount, an area in, I want to say Massachusetts, but it's also in New York. It straddles the border between New York and Massachusetts in the Berkshires. And we'll have that for you next week. In the meantime, enjoy all the fresh snow that's fallen in the east and in the southwest. Have a good week, Weather Weenies.